All right, ready to do this?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. What's up, everybody? This is Robert Peppo. I'm here with Charles DeVos. We are going to rock a fucking podcast that I've been excited for like fucking years since I've started, because he's got a great story. But this is episode number 39. I appreciate you guys rocking with me for this long. 2022, this will be our final episode, and I wanted to bring something awesome to end with, to really make it fucking end right, and then weave into what I'm going to do for the next year. So listen in today for some dope, inspiring shit. And I have a little intro. I don't usually do intros, but you have a great story and some shit I want to talk about. So I'm going to start with reading, which I don't normally do, because I found a few things in my notes. And as I told you when I was prepping for this, Alex was bringing out like a lot of ideas and different things that we've done over the years that I forgot. And then I was going through my phone like, I want to make this shit fucking start right, because you're very important to me. You've been a mentor to me. So I'm going to start this like this. All right. I'm going to end this year with someone who has been the start of most things that I've done. Okay, we're going to weave in a lot of that for today. He is a musician, a world traveler, one of the few people I know that's been more places than me. He's a martial artist, and one of the few people that I would very much question the outcome of the fight had I had to fight him, and that is not the case most often. He is a high-level food and wine connoisseur, as we experienced yesterday. I appreciate that. He's an athlete from bodybuilding, powerlifting, MMA, running. Most importantly, he's a mentor to me in all of those things and much more, okay? There are very few people in this world that I would pick to be on my side if I was in the worst situation ever. You are one of them, 100%. There are very few people I look to for advice in literally any genre. You are one of them. There are very few people like me who I feel can do anything when they decide to do it. You are one of them. Thank you thus far, and I cannot wait for what comes next.
Thanks,
Appreciate you. So I have two quotes too that make me think of you. You may go harder than me for a day, a week, or a month, or even a year, but you will never go harder than me over the course of the duration of life. This is how I close the gap and win and keep on winning in life. That's what I see when you do things. You just fucking are relentless. Okay. And so that makes me do that same thing, right? I like to mimic people that do the shit that they talk about, do something hard, and continue for a long period of time. And that's very impressive to me. And now I have a quote from Buddha. Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. For me, what that means to me from you is that when you teach me something or talked about something or do something, it only adds to it. You're never taking away something by sharing that with somebody else, sharing your experience, your time, your happiness, your experience. You just add to it. And I appreciate that very much, because you've done that in literally everything you've ever done. And when I call you or ask you about some shit, no matter what it is, right? You always share your advice, and I appreciate that. Is that long enough winded?
No, it's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. Happy that I had the influence with you. I've always, on the flip side of that, I've always been very amazed at the things that you pulled off. I'm happy to add to that and be, like an inspiration. I just do things. I never think that it inspires anybody.
Well, that's what it is, though. When you do those things, you don't know what that end result will be or who's watching.
Right.
And I think that's the glory of it, because we don't do it for that.
Right. Yeah.
But it happens.
Yeah. And it's cool. Especially with you, watching your progress and everything that you've accomplished has been mind blowing to me. So when you kind of like bring out like stories and things like that, things that I never thought about for a second, like, oh shit, the audience is listening, I guess, and you just sometimes it's just like you get so into your own world and your own head. I'm glad that most of the there's probably a lot of decisions I've made that weren't the right ones. I'm glad that some of the stuff
we might get into some of those.
I'm glad that that the stuff that I did do carried over and left some kind of good inspiration, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, that's being quite humble. But that's another reason why he's the fucking man. Because being humble while being a fucking savage is like literally the pinnacle of being a fucking savage. Because there's some assholes, and that part of them isn't cool. So you can't really look to them for that. When you can look to someone that's a fucking savage, but also humble, cordial, approachable, knowledgeable, that's like the whole fucking package, right? That's what I try and create, and I fail at that a lot. But it's definitely something I try to do. And I think you do a great job of that. And I look up to a lot of people. I often share on the podcast all the high-level motherfuckers I look up to. And one of them, I'm wearing his shirt, David Goggins. And I was toying with saying, and I mean this, that the only person close to David Goggins and the savagery that he's done is you in my life. That's why I wore this shirt, because you started me in doing some savage shit. And so I wanted to kind of tie in that story because there's not many people that can do some really cool shit. And you're one of them. And through the good, the bad, and the ugly, we do that shit and enjoy it and hate it at the same time.
Right. Question why you're doing it,
Yeah. So I want to start by telling a little story of like my first real remembrance of something from you. And it'll start us into kind of your journey. So when I was super young, maybe fucking 5 or some shit, we were at grandma's house and you were fucking working out. All right. I might have told you this story before. I don't care. You were benching or something in the basement. And to me, I think it was like 275 pounds and maybe you were like 17, 18. I don't know. And I was like, that's the most shit I've ever seen somebody move ever. Right. You're the strongest person in the fucking world. And literally from then I was like, what if one day I can do that? Right. And he's just drinking like a glass of water, fucking getting it by himself in the basement. And that's why I have a basement gym and do it myself. Right. And, but from then, like quite literally, and I then got involved in sports, but since then I remember vividly this fucking jacked guy that was like older than me, strong as fuck. I'm going to do something like that. Yeah. And so you were an athlete growing up. So is that kind of how it started with wrestling and, getting into fitness and.
Yeah. I had it around me, like, as much as music was around me, I guess I had that around me. I do have my older brother, Jim, to say that it was a heavy influence on me. He started developing and working out, and he got really cut. And
how much older is Jimmy than you?
I think he's 6 years older than I am. Yeah, sorry, Jim.
Oh well,
I know what it is. To 60, we'll put it that way. I'm closer.
Brenda's older.
But no, yeah, Jim was he got into martial arts young as well, and when he started doing it, he started competing and everything like that, and I always thought it was like, incredible. So then my mom got, me into it and all that, and I think it was in 3rd grade when that started. Before that, before that I was in gymnastics for a little bit and all that. So I was like kind of like doing all that kind of fun stuff when I was young.
Gymnasts are fucking jacked, incredibly strong.
Yeah, and
it's incredibly.
But I was young. I was like 3rd and 4th grade doing that. Same time when I was doing, I was in Chungmukwan, like one of the local martial arts thing in the neighborhood. My brother was too, and he excelled at it much more than I did. But Jim like took it to another level then too, and he started working out and everything. And then I just see it and he had great results. I mean, Jim looked great.
He was always in good shape.
He was like one of those weird people in like the mid '80s that could pull off the Prince pants. Prince had those flamenco pants, and Jim had them too, except he had like his abs rolled, like he'd wear no shirt. I'm like, Jesus, look at this fucker, and so when I started I started working out in like the end of 6th grade, and then into 7th grade is when I got more serious about it. 8th grade, and that's when like there was a few people at our school, like Dave Grishus and others that were working out. It's like, oh, these guys are the big guys from Independence junior high and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it all started, and we. And like Dave and others, but then also having Jim around, and Jim started working for health clubs and stuff like that. That kind of, brought me onto really taking working out seriously at an early age. So,
damn. So I mean, that's way earlier than me. It's impressive. Like I was in sports young, but I didn't work out like that. I didn't have anybody in close proximity, an older brother or anything like that here to show me that. Like you were the first introduction to that. And I remember Jimmy being in shape, but it just resonated with me that you were the fucking.
Well, yeah. I took it to a different level. Jim always stayed in shape. He had the luxury of a fast metabolism and that type of thing. I mean, I worked out, like, I was spotty in high school. I mean, I was really, I got into wrestling at Marist in my freshman year of high school, and they had a great wrestling program and stuff, and I didn't have any kind of wrestling background, having martial arts and stuff like that. It was, like, much different, especially at that time. There was no real, nothing like MMA like now or anything like that. But I remember when I got into wrestling, I took to it really well. And I could see the, like, you know, just as a kid, I could see the holes in, like, the game that I had and all that. So it was cool. It was fun learning that and putting those pieces together and all that. So, but like, yeah, so when but like, you know, throughout high school, I'd come in, out, whatever, wrestled for a few years. And then, I did go a few years without working out too. I mean, I went like, I kept my physique really well. It stayed with me because I started, I guess I'm assuming because I started such an early age.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, I was like, I was like 20 or 21, 21. And like I was doing bands, I was playing the clubs and all that stuff, and having a great time and everything. And I didn't have my shirt on one morning. I was walking, and I looked in the mirror, and it like horrified me. I like, my chest cuts were gone. I'm like, no way, no fucking way, this is not happening. I went down and started working out, and then never stopped. I haven't, like, I've been consistent from that day on.
What is that? 30 years?
Yeah, 30 years. Yeah.
Fuck. 30 years consistent. You motherfuckers want results today? You expect, like, why isn't this supplement working for me?
Yeah, and the other thing too is that, like, I wasn't a big supplement taker. I mean, it's weird because of the industry that I'm in, but I wasn't a big supplement taker or anything else like that. I just pushed myself. You know, I kind of just brought in food, read what I could, and like muscle and fitness magazines and stuff like that. And just, you know, later on, I started doing more powerlifting, that type of thing. Not making it to like to the scope of like power lifters, but for my size and everything like that, I was really strong.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump too far ahead, but because you said that, when he says not strong, I'm going to tell you one more story that I was going to wait for, but I'm going to say it because you brought up powerlifting. The first time I went out to lift with him, when I was at least trying to lift and thinking I knew, the day I got there, his shins were bleeding, okay? Because he was fucking deadlifting like 600 pounds or some shit. And I was like, are you good? And I didn't, you know, I know this shit now, but back then I was like, you're doing what? What the fuck am I doing? So I went back home, and literally after I left California, I came back home and dragged that fucking bar across my legs. And I said, I don't give a fuck if this is what it is. This is what I'm going to fucking do. All right. And I remember that. So there's levels to this shit, and it still doesn't matter the weight necessarily. It's how you do it, how hard you fucking go. I was never the strongest, but I would keep up with fucking anybody. I'll fucking throw down. Yeah. Right. So I just want to throw that in because I don't want to forget all these stories that still, literally, that story resonates with me every time I used to deadlift. Mm-hmm. And I don't deadlift anymore because of my back and shit, but I still do the movements. But back then, I had to have my shins fucking hurt.
Right.
You did it. I had to fucking do it, right? There's a secret here.
I don't know if it was the best plan. I mean, but the thing was, is like the funny thing is like deadlifting, that story, there was a guy at the gym, and he was a power lifter that was like, he'd go to competitions and stuff like that. And I had my form was pretty good, but I was watching him and I'm like, man, this fucking guy, he's doing it. Like, so I went, I think his name was Anthony. I don't remember his last name. But I went up and talked to him, like, man, I'm like, fuck, man, you're pulling. I sat with him. I to this day, I've never done so many. I was with him for like 2 hours working on my form. So my form never changed after that. Yep. And he was like critiquing me and all that shit. I probably did, I don't know, 200, 300 reps that fucking just working on the form with them. So that, like, and that's kind of like how the bar stays close and all that stuff.
You have to take it there in order to find that perfect spot for you. Yeah. And you will drag it by default most of the time until you really get that right motion, or until you build enough calluses where you're just good. Yeah, exactly. Which is what happened to me because of that many reps as well, right? So I took these pieces from him, and knowing that, like, you didn't have to tell me that story, but I know that's what you did. Now looking back, having the experience I have, and then deadlifting with my crew that we would do on Thursdays, right? We all knew we would videotape each other to look at the form, right? We would critique each other, look at it, fix it, and go. And then I got way stronger than I ever thought I would. Right. A lot from form. Yeah. And from watching and talking to people who were stronger than me. Right. So again, a lot of my listeners, our younger guys, are coming up to ask me a lot of things. It's going to the people that have done it or are doing it better than you, have a little bit of knowledge, accepting that knowledge and then just applying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
it.
Well,
it's
that's the thing. It's like, swallowing pride. So if you want to do something right, it doesn't hurt to ask the question.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. It's like I've seen people at the gym, and I'm not a talkative person at all. I don't. At the gym, I don't really like to talk to anybody. And like people probably think I'm an asshole because I'm just fucking. This is what I'm doing. Get out of my fucking way.
Because we're busy. We're busy, and we got a mission, right?
Right.
So
yeah, and then I want to get the fuck out of here. That type of thing. Especially if I'm at the gym on the Saturday, it's following up a really long run that I did earlier in the day. But occasionally you'll see something, and it's actually kind of how I got the trainer that I have, because I've been getting, have a personal trainer for the last 3 years now. But I remember watching this fucking guy, and I'm like, look at these fucking workouts. I was blown away. So I just started incorporating his workouts into my workouts and making them harder and all that stuff. So I noticed he did this like insane balancing shit, just fucking crazy. So my wife Krista, when she was having some balancing issues and things like that, then I talked to him, and this was like 2010, I think it was. And then so he's been training her ever since. And then I trained with him for a while, and then I went like full time, 3 days a week with him about 3 years ago. So yeah, Nathaniel Frost, he's really good at really good trainer.
Well, if you say that, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, he kicks the shit out of me, so it's cool.
No, it's awesome. And that's the cool thing. Like, you don't need it, but you want it and need it, right? And so even at that level, 30 years later, knowing all the things being in the industry for so long, there's still things to learn. It's why professional athletes still have coaches, right? And they coach themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always a thing, right? There's always evolution. And I'm constantly learning, even now, just listening, right?
Yeah,
there's much more to learn. It's never ending. And especially if you want to do that a long time.
Yeah, right.
And be in shape forever. Like jacked, can run a fucking marathon whenever, staying vascular and shit. Like, that takes a lot of dedication and time and evaluation. And I love hearing that, because it's exactly what I'm going to do.
Right.
I plan to do this till I fucking can't. Like,
absolutely.
Literally, that's it.
Yeah. So,
okay, we jumped ahead a bit. I want to hear when the music started to come in. Okay, so we jumped ahead, but bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
How you even got into music and that as heavy as you did.
Okay. I mean, I had like it's really hard to explain on like the attraction that I had and the curiosity that I had about music, because it happened and it's so young. And it was my brother was an influence, but your mom, Brenda, was like a heavy influence on that to me. Because she listened to like all genres of music and stuff like that, but she was a big Led Zeppelin fan and fans of all those bands. And it made me a big Led Zeppelin fan. I mean, to give a for instance on how far back this goes, it was like preschool, and they had kids bring in their own records. So everybody brought in like their, whatever it was, their Disney albums and stuff like that. I brought in Led Zeppelin 4. And they didn't play it. I was so pissed. I was so upset by that. But that's how it was. I was like listening to that. I mean, I listened to the Disney shit too. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't. But I loved Aerosmith. I loved Boston. All these bands and stuff like that.
Well, when your older brother and sister are probably playing it all the time, you're like, that's what it is.
And Brenda
right?
was listening to it constantly. Yeah. Constantly. So she was a heavy influence on that to me. It might have been inadvertent, but I was a lot younger than her. I'm a lot younger than her. But I loved going on rides with her in her car, because she'd have all the music playing and stuff like that, and she was a lot of fun. So that's how it started initially. And but even before I ever started playing guitar, I was like in like 5th grade, 6th grade. I remember just couldn't wait to get home to hear. I was actually talking to Larry about this the other day. My niece's husband. But we were talking. I was like, I'd have like the songs in my head so much. It was like I couldn't wait to get home and just like kind of run home so I could listen to I put on my headphones. I had my little turntable. Hit that and just be listening just so intensely. I listen to songs over and over and over again and all that. And I just couldn't get enough of it. It just filled me. And then one of the things was I wanted a guitar, I think it was like right around 5th grade. And I remember the song, there was a lot, like Eddie Van Halen really, when I was a kid, I could hear, I'm wearing my Van Halen shirt, by the way.
And I remember you having posters too.
Yeah.
If I can remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a ton. But but I remember in the 70s when I first heard Van Halen, I was like, It came out in 78, but I wasn't 7. I was like 6. And I heard it in your sister's car. And I remember like
my mother's car.
And she says, yeah. Good Lord. Yeah, Tracy. Yeah, Tracy's driving me around. Yeah. So, but yeah, in Brenda's car. So, we're driving and I listen, hear like You Really Got Me. And I think they had Eruption at that time. And I was blown. I like, as a kid, I was like, I knew I never heard anything like that. There was a gap in stuff like that because when we moved and Brenda wasn't around as much and all that, where I didn't hear a lot of that music for a while. And, but later then there was, what was it? I almost hate saying the name of the song because it became like, it's like kind of become a humorous thing based on, I was like, fuck, I can't remember the name of the show, but it's Don't Stop Believing by Journey. So they have the part in there, and like you said, the Midnight Train Going Anywhere, and there's like I'd hear that, I'm like, oh my God, and fucking Neil Sean, man, this guy's fucking insane. Yeah. Just that, I was like, I just wanted to play that so bad. It was like, I'm like, oh God, every time I hear, I'd get the fucking record, put it back just to listen, like, oh my God, oh fuck, it's like, as a kid, I didn't even understand. As an adult, it's orgasmic. I'm like, fuck. But it felt in my soul, So I wanted a guitar really bad, and my mom didn't want to give me one because she thought I would give it up. And it's kind of a relation to I was playing the trumpet. We had a whole joke about this the other day. I was like, I had a fucking trumpet when I was a kid. I'm like, I had no desire to ever play a fucking trumpet. Yeah. Now, and when you suck on a trumpet, everybody knows you suck. It's like, you could take the little thing off and like a kazoo kind of fucking sound, but you're blaring this thing in the house, like, and I just hated it. It was like miserable. But so my mom had that in her mind of like, okay, well, he hated this instrument and all this, and we tried to get him into music, so she didn't think I would take to the guitar. And then so then and then finally, after enough nagging, when I was 13, December of '84, that's when I got my first guitar, and then I really started to follow it from there. So that's how it all started.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Brenda.
Right. Yeah, I owe a lot of this to Brenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, here's an interesting thing, and I'll tell you about this. When Eddie Van Halen passed away, it hurt me. Like, it hit me hard. Like, he's one of the biggest influences of my life. And the thing is that what I thought about, like, after that, when I was at work, and I'm like, look, I got to go home. I know this might sound stupid, but I'm like, I'm having a hard time. I can't even concentrate. I went home and I opened a bottle of wine. I talked to Krista, and we were talking. I'm like, the thing is that where I stand today is like in LA, and everything that I've done is based on Eddie Van Halen. And it's kind of weird to think about. I'm like, because I wanted to be that level player. Yeah. And I chased it, and I really got serious about it like my senior year of high school. And then when I went to GIT, it was all based on that heavy influence. It wasn't just him alone, but it was really like going back and hearing that. It was like that sound that was just so different and radiated, that like that dream and everything else like that. And then playing the clubs and then going back out to LA and everything else was just based on that. It's weird. It's like that musical influence kind of led the journey to working out, bringing everything else to the whole notch, because the mentality doesn't change. It's like you bring that into anything. It's like, yeah, I remember talking to my friends, like, I don't have the longest fingers in the fucking world, but I could play a lot what these guys play. Like, how you do? I'm like, I just learned to do certain things, like wrist-wise and stuff like that, to be able to hit notes and do things that I can't do naturally. But I never thought of it as a stopping point. I also got blown away by other guitar players, too. I was like, remember my sophomore year, there was this one kid, and I went to, like, audition for a band, and the other guitar player showed up late, and then he came in and just blew me away. There's smoke. I was like, Jesus. He made me I didn't want to play guitar. Like, I was home for it was the first time in I think 2 years that I didn't touch my guitar for 5 days. That's how much it affected me. And then I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I gotta get good. Like, I what I thought was good. No, I can play like this. I can do that. Like, there's a way to do it. Just, you really have to dedicate yourself to it. So that was a big turning point to me too, to really dive in and then just and then think of it as a fight. Like, I want to fuck somebody up on guitar. Like, yeah. That's how it was. I was like, and then I got really aggressive with it. My friends saw a lot of that aggression with it. Like, I was ready for a challenge any fucking time after my junior year. I was like, fucking bring it on, motherfucker. You know?
I love it. Do y'all see where I get it from? I'm not the only fucking one, right? This is my blood. Do you see? All right. Does it make sense now? All right. I'm not alone. All right. I feel crazy here because he's out in LA and not around me, but imagine if he fucking was. All right. It'd be fucking dangerous. Because I often say I'm competitive like that too. I'm like weird shit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then I don't have to be.
Right.
But I am.
Yeah.
But when you see it and you feel it and you know it here, how can you not be?
Right.
I'm doing myself a disservice if I don't follow that fucking thing.
Yeah.
And it's what you're saying. You articulated it really well. I don't. I say I'm fucking competitive and I fucking want to.
Right.
Because I get too much in it. And it's how I do with business stuff now or army stuff or football back then, right? Or weightlifting. Weightlifting is me versus me. Same with guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm still competitive.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still going to fucking get it. Nobody's safe.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's just it. It's, you know, and it's funny because I unfortunately I don't play, that much, like once every couple months. And it's wild because like watching YouTube now, everybody's got everything to watch. And I'm like, these fucking players they're fucking amazing. And it like, but at the same time too, is I keep my chops up and I'm a little bit blown away by it. I had some discussions about it's like, well, it was the practice that you put in for such a long time. You might take me like 5-10 minutes to warm up, but then I can start like shredding pretty quick. So it's kind of cool. But yeah, I like to have a little bit of that still, like, because I have like where other people have talked about me or like ran into me. I was in Vegas one time and there was one of our vendors was there and he's a guitar player and he actually did a residency at one of I think the Key Club or something like that in Hollywood. So he's a solid player and everything. So we stopped at this pawn shop out there and we had a bunch of people from work that were with us. And so he started playing and all that. It's really good blues sound and all that stuff. And he sounded really good. And at that time, I hadn't played in like a month. I'm like, man, I don't know how my finger's going to go. So he like, hit it and whatever else. So I'm like, I got the guitar and I could just feel it. I'm like, oh, this is I'm going to fucking shred this motherfucker. And I did. And it was funny because then like people at work had no idea. And they're like kind of stepping back. Remember Jacob, the one who did the podcast? He's like, damn, dude. And then like there's another guy, Tito, is like, fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, so we got done. It made my ego feel really good. It was fun. And then the guy Scott who talked to me is like, man, he's like, dude, I didn't know you had. I'm like, I respect him because he's actively playing. I'm like, dude, this is just what's left over of me. Yeah. He's looking at the shrapnel or something. So, but it's cool. It's nice to be able to like kind of impress with that, with all the time that I put in, when I was younger.
Yeah, fuck so, yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah,
I love it. All right, so you threw in there going to LA and kind of threw it in there, and then going to school there, and then I think ultimately teaching there too, right?
No,
is that
no?
Okay.
I never taught there.
So at what point then, when you took this seriously, post high school, and made that kind of decision, I'm going to fucking follow this and go. First of all, that's a big step for a young person to take. But obviously, when you talk about the hunger you had for it and everything, it was probably like, I'm going to do this.
So no, it actually wasn't. Oh. I'll be honest with you. When I got accepted to GIT, I didn't expect to get accepted to GIT. There were other players. I was like, we all the players at high school. They all, and I'm sure it's the same today. If somebody's a musician, they know each other. And what's kind of funny is like guitar players back in the day. I don't know how it is today, but I imagine it hasn't changed much. It's like, how many guitar players would take the screw in a light bulb? It's like all of them. One to do it, and the rest to say they can do it better. Yeah. So that's kind of the mentality of it, So while we all knew each other and stuff like that, and while they were good, there were some really good players. It was like you couldn't compliment them too much.
For sure. Yeah.
Because it might take away. And I was young. Later it didn't matter, but at that time it's like, oh, if you fucking compliment them,
of course,
think that you're better. They're better than you, and I can't have that. They couldn't do it either. But anyway, so they all took the exam, and like this is when I started hearing about guitar and technology. So they all took the exam and everything like that, and then they didn't get in, and they were telling me it's like, well, they put you on a waiting list or whatever else, and then like they had some. I can't remember the verbiage that they had told me, but they told me they didn't get accepted. So I came home this one day after the one kid, this other kid didn't get accepted, and I just was talking to my mom about it. She's like, well, why don't we get you to test? And I'm like, well, and I'm thinking about, these guys are good players, I'm like, but I probably won't be able to get in, and I was 16, I think, when I took it. So she calls the school right there. I mean, we're sitting there. My mom calls, and I'm like, oh shit. She looks it up and get information and everything. She gets the number to Musicians Institute and then calls, and then and she asks for a test. So anyways, the test comes like a week or so later. And then I did it. And so, well, the thing what I started noticing right away was like, it was a lot of music theory, and I knew music theory. And I'm like, I bet that's what they didn't have. It's like, I kind of have that like kind of knowledge on scales and all this, and I can draw them out, write them out and all that. And I'm like, that might've been the failing point,
Sure.
So all that stuff was, it's seemingly easy to me. And then I just did a tape and everything else like that, but I still didn't expect to get accepted. And then I think, I don't know where I was, but I came home. This is like a few months later. And my mom had a banner in front of the house that, hey, you're going to L.A.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, Jesus Christ. So I came in and I'm like, what? And then I had the acceptance thing and everything. I was like, oh, my God. I'm like, what the fuck? Honestly, it didn't even occur. All I did was take a fucking test.
Sure.
So there were two people. My mom was huge in the support of that. And as it turned out later, she said she was terrified. She didn't want me to go, but she pushed me to go. I still didn't think, honestly, up until I got onto the plane that it was going to happen. But I remember one of my old girlfriends, Kim Brady, who I'm still friends with to this day. Her mom, I loved her mom, Kathy. She was she really took to me and all that. And she was like really like kind of like a mentor in some weird way to like, neighborhood kids. Like we're a bunch of fucking misfits and stuff like that. And she always loved California. And we were talking one day, and I remember it was like kind of context, because I was scared. I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I want to go out here and if I can go and stuff like that and all that. And I remember talking to her. I was like, yeah, still. She's like, so you ready to, go? It's like, whatever. It's like, like how much, it would be the fall of 1989 when I'd leave and all that. And I think I don't remember exactly what month we were talking about it, but it was far out. And I was like, I don't know. There's a lot to think about. And she kind of looked back. She's like, well, you got to go. She's like, it's there for you. You got the test and everything. And I remember her saying that with like shock. You're like, you questioning this? That it was funny. That was the one that pushed me over. I'm like, okay,
good.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't tell anybody else that I was questioning it. So then I had some friends, and my buddy Dave Grishis, he moved out there with me too. And that was like a huge support. Like we had a tough time living out there.
How old were you?
17 when I moved out there.
Fuck.
It was a week before I turned 18. Yeah. So, yeah.
Moving across country, but with just your friend, you don't know what you're going to do. You probably got to get a job. I don't think, at least not today, and I don't know why, many people take bigger risks like that. I just don't see it. Like, kids go to college and shit, but not to pursue something that I think they really want to. A lot of people kind of go like, oh, I'm going to do a couple of years. I'm going to try something, but maybe that's just my perspective of it. But like, you're going out there for this, okay, for music with Dave, and you get there. And I know a little bit of the story that it was a struggle, but upon getting there at 17, how was that?
Oh, it's terrifying. It's fucked up. Because, like I remember that was one of the things. It's like, we had a huge party the night before I left, and fucking Grishis, he ends up getting into a fight that night, the night before we leave. It's just
that wasn't uncommon back in your day,
no,
was it?
Not at all. And it was like a whole thing. It was really funny. And we were out late, the whole thing, and so we'd go out there or whatever. But we knew everything. It's like, oh, we're fearless, all this shit and stuff like that. So initially we get out there, lose my fucking guitar. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? But they ended up finding it, and then they delivered it the next day. So it got in a day after I did. I guess it went to Hawaii. I'm like, motherfucker, I would have liked to have gone to Hawaii.
Yeah, right. Send me too.
This was my first trip. I never even flew on a fucking plane before, so... Anyway, but we got out, and then I remember on the Sunday, so it was September 16th of 89 is when I moved out there. And then the following day was a Sunday, the 17th. Then we went out to Hollywood. And Hollywood was fucked up back then. It was like, it was a different place. Like, lot of there's a lot of homeless, now, but I mean, they were all over Hollywood Boulevard. It smelled like piss. It was like, there was a lot of gangs and shit like that. I mean, you fucking.
I mean, it still is.
Yeah. But it was in your face in Hollywood. It was like, you know, during the day, like you really had to keep your eyes open. But I remember we were walking around, and we're just seeing like all these people, and we're like, you know, I remember Dave and I'm like, motherfucker, and I'm like, I gotta fucking come out here every day to this fucking place, you know. And I adapted fast. I had to take 2 buses a day to get there. That was interesting. It was like by car from we lived in Burbank, so I wasn't really close to school at all. If you drove at that time anyway, it'd take you about 20 minutes. It took me about an hour and a half each day for the bus to get there one way. I had to take 2 buses, and that was an experience in its own right. I was the only, you know, I carried my guitar. It was like a mark for somebody. I remember somebody tried to threaten me to take my guitar one day, and I said, you know, you can try, but I'm gonna bash this motherfucker. I'm like, I'll bash this thing over your fucking head, and neither one of us are gonna get it. And then they didn't. Like, I don't fucking like you try it, you know. So. But for the most part, like people started to know me on the bus. It was kind of fun, you know. Like, but it sucked, and it wasn't any part of it that was easy. The school was fucking amazing. Players were incredible. Dave and I learned about life really fast. You know, we had a roommate situation. Roommate moved out. Turns out all of our furniture was rented. They took all of our furniture away. I slept on the floor for like 6 months. I didn't want to tell my mom on how difficult things were. I lost like 20 pounds when I didn't have 20 pounds to lose. Back then, I used to smoke, so it helped suppress my appetite. So like we had a thing figured out. It's like we didn't really have any money or anything, but so like there was a place called Tommy's out still there that was right down I lived on it was 1600 North San Fernando Boulevard, and I lived right down the street from Tommy's restaurant or a burger joint, and they have like these chili cheese fries and everything's like about their chili. So I'd get like a chili cheese fry with extra cheese and extra chili, and that would be my breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then my breakfast the next day. So that's how it was, you know. And and even like it even went so far as like the last 2 weeks I was out there, I got held up at a fucking phone booth. Some asshole pulls a fucking knife. I still think back of just wanting to kill this guy. I was stuck in a fucking phone booth with somebody with a knife on me. I just got back from the beach. I'm wearing a fucking Def Leppard shirt with spandex shorts and fucking high tops with no socks. I'm like, why do I look like the one who's going to have money, you motherfucker?
Yeah.
You know, and then at that point, I had enough of LA, and it was right about the time the school was wrapping up. So I couldn't wait to get out, to be perfectly honest. And Dave had left a couple months before school wrap. And so I was alone in the apartment. We had another roommate at that time. His name was Daryl. He was a guitar player. He was actually a good singer, guitar player from Canada. But then he moved out the last month, so I was at the apartment by myself. And that kind of changed. Like, I'm like, man, all right, you know, this is just kind of sucking, you know.
Yeah.
But then came home with a lot of like drive and ambition and things like that to get my band going and all that stuff. So that was a heavy life experience out there. It was actually a lot of fun.
Thrown to the fire quick.
Yeah. It was cool.
But I think that would give you some like thick skin to be able to handle the kind of coming back. I mean, coming back to what you know in a nucleus makes that shit kind of easier because you've been through that than coming home. And I know that it wasn't easy necessarily because then, you know, your story goes on, but going through that at that age, for sure, I think young people should feel a little bit of pressure. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to suck for anybody. If you can avoid the suck by listening to people like us, do that. But it does build character.
Well, you know, I don't want to give away that it sucked. I mean, the fucking experience. You know, and I had great support of my parents. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without them. It would have not happened. But I mean, what I fucking learned and what that did for me was worth everything. Like, that was it. Like, and at that time, here's the funny thing is even at that time, but I felt like different. When I came home, I actually had to slow myself down because I'm like, I felt like I had been gone for like 10 years and like transformed, you know, in a different way. And, so it was like, I knew the experience was good, but I remember Dave and I didn't think that life was good.
Sure.
You know, we had a whole thing, and it was one of our jokes. It's like, you know, you hear about all these things about later in life, or they say, you're going to look back at this one day and say, those were some of the best times of our life. And we joke about that as if they weren't. And we talk about it today. It's like, fuck, man. Yeah. How awesome was that shit? You know, like the shit we went through was fucking real.
For sure.
You know? So, yeah. So it was awesome. It was really something.
Fuck. So you come home then. Mm-hmm. How long did you come home for? And did you continue music here, or was it not?
Yeah, so I mean, I just jumped into the bands right away. I started just playing with like Mike Corpitz and a few others that I was playing with for a while, and we just started playing parties and everything else like that. And I was young. I was only 18. I just turned 19 after I came back, and so we did all that and stuff like that, and then just kind of. I just started. I kept up with all my like the stuff that I learned. And I just started applying it more and more and more as I was playing with bands and everything else like that. And then it went on, to a couple different bands, and then I was with Poetic Justice. That was my final band, I think. I tried out for a few others, but when I was with Poetic Justice, we did the CD together. I worked. They were great. I liked working with those guys.
I remember that. I had the poster in my room.
Yeah.
And it was like Back Alley or something. I think was in a poster. Was that the one? Maybe those were just your pictures. And it was maybe I'm getting confused. But you all had long hair.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He had really long hair.
Right.
I had long hair at some point too. But either way, I guess I'm following you in literally everything. But one of the pictures, maybe it was that. Let me tell you, you had a guitar. It had some sharp edges.
Oh yeah, my BC Rich.
That thing, I was like, this guy's a fucking rock star. And it was on my wall because you're my uncle, and you had made some posters with Poetic Justice, or
right.
the headshots and everything you had, and it was just like I'm a rock stars in my family. Here's the fucking poster. Look at my fucking uncle. Yeah. It was awesome. I remember that guitar distinctly. I don't know why. It just looked. It was
cool. A fun guitar. Yeah, it was my Ironbird BC Rich purple. Yeah, that was a cool guitar. It was a lot of fun. It always grabbed a lot of attention whenever I brought it out.
Yeah, I think it was sick.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, that was cool. But yeah, so but then I when I chose to kind of retire, I guess, from music, it was the grunge scene had come in heavy, and things had changed, and it didn't seem that guitar was so important anymore. And I was kind of pissed about that. I didn't take to grunge really well. I like it now. But I didn't take to it too well at that point, especially with the way that they kind of changed, started putting the whole thing that I grew up in and the thing that I spent all my time learning in. It was almost like a joke. And I'm all those years and everything else that I dove into, I'm like, man, I fuck all you guys. It made me bitter. And I still went. I actually tried out for a couple bands and got the gig. It was never a problem for me to get a gig with anybody. But fuck, man, I'm like, man, if anybody's a musician, hear me out, man. Get a day job and stay with it too, so you can learn some form of responsibility. That was at least I worked construction during all that stuff. I had a great boss. I was telling you, because I went to lunch with today, Dave Stetko. I was in construction for 8 years. And I really had a great work ethic. I learned it from him. He was fun to work with, taught me how to do things, and it made me kind of want to come to work. And then I got to plan my own schedule and really excelled at that too. And I took pride in that. So I mean, even if I was out till 5 o'clock in the morning after I would make it to work on time to work. And the thing was that when I did the other bands, when I started working with when I tried out for a few of the other bands, man, they had two of the bands that I tried out for. One the first one, you got it, went over a few of their songs and stuff and started learning rapidly. And then it was the third practice, one person didn't show up, and they're like, oh yeah, this happens from time to time. I'm like, all right, cool, I'm fucking out. And they couldn't believe me. I'm like, no, I can't do that. They're like, and then they're like, well, if they said, well, this doesn't happen, I'm like, all the time. I'm like, well, how fucking often does it happen? Well, and then I'm like, well, you don't have a call or any of this other shit. I mean, we had a similar experience in Poetic Justice with that. I'm like, I don't have fucking time for this anymore. So I grabbed my stuff and left. They tried calling me back, but I didn't bother. Then the same thing happened a couple months later. Tried out, this band was really good. I was impressed with them. And so they would have a lot of stuff that I'd be showcasing guitar with and all that. So I really dug that. And they had another guitar player too. He was ripping. So I'm like, and we hit it off pretty well. So I'm like, I could play with this guy really good. We could do some badass shit. Fucking singer doesn't show up to the next practice. I'm like, all right, I'm out. And same fucking, whoa, no, what? I'm like, I can't, I don't fucking work like this. I'm like, this is a job. Like, I consider it a job.
Yeah.
So,
and something you love. You don't want someone to
yeah.
fucking have a part-time interest in the thing you love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard to find it.
Oh yeah. And that was it. But that's when I quit. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I wish I would have not done that, but I don't have any regrets where I sit today. So I don't think the path I chose was wrong. But I did. I loved the guitar so much that I started to hate it. It was a weird dilemma, and I almost went like 2 years without playing, and then I picked it up again, and I retaught myself really fast, and did all that, and started playing with some old friends again here and there, and that's when I decided that I was going to go back to GIT in 2000, and that plan fell through.
Well, you don't know life's path, right? You can plan things out as much as you want until reality and life and everything else comes through.
Right.
And then you have to change course and whatever.
Yeah.
But you never stopped playing. When you say you retire, you retired from the band portion.
Yeah. And it was, so I was done with that. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back to, to be perfectly honest, I was in a dark spot. The late 90s weren't good for me. I'm happy I lived through it. I was really, like, when I reflect on it, I had honestly, I never really had anybody to direct me on anything. I didn't. I wish I did. Or I wish I opened my mind a little bit more back then. But it's weird because I think back, I didn't have any like players after GIT or anything else like that would help. And I never even thought about that. I wasn't bitter about it. It just never occurred to me. I'm like, I just thought I'll make my own way or anything else like that. I kind of wish there would have been something. So when I was like, I had no direction. I was just working, from like 98, 99 and then going into 2000, really nothing. I mean, honestly, I was like just working out. That's when I started getting really strong and all that. Cause I had a lot of anger. I mean, I was fucked up mentally. When I look back about that time, it was a really weird time. I was drinking way too much. There was, and I remember like, I'm like, started thinking like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I started like, kind of evaluating my life. And what ended up happening too, was interesting. This was actually what kind of changed my course a bit. My friend Tim, he's in the millwrights. He still is today. And Tim, like, if I have to say it, like, as far as like in a different, he and Todd are mentors in different forms, but like Tim was a heavy influence as a friend, and so is Todd. Tim with Lackey owns the professional muskie tournament trail. And like,
oh yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Right.
I didn't write that.
Exactly.
Oh, you're fishing and fuck.
Yeah, and he's just a fucking like a funny ass motherfucker. I mean, the guy is he's smart and all this shit. Anyway, he's been in the millwrights and all that, and he was up like in there enough and respected enough that he could have gotten me in. So he talked to me. He's like, hey, you want to get a job? He's telling like there was so many benefits. There were so many things about it that sounded great, and I was like, man, all right, cool. So, but Tim's a one and done. He's going to offer it to you. And then if you don't, that fucking opportunity's over. So I'm like, and I knew that from him, from being around him and hanging around with him as much as I did. And, but I remember when he told me about it, then I sat and thought, I'm like, all right, let me think this out. If I do this, then this is it. Like, that's going to be my career. And like, I'm going to be, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm thinking about my life, where it led up and all this. And I'm like, so let me just think really quick. I'll get this and this will be cool. I was helping Tim with with some of the plan, like a little bit of his tournament that was coming up and all that. So it was like the very first one. And I know that I loved hanging out, loved doing the trips to Wisconsin, Canada, and all that stuff it was so awesome. But I'm like, this is probably going to be this, like it's going to be, I'll have that job for the rest of my life, more than likely. Cause there's no reason to leave, stay in the union, get great pay and all this shit. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I started thinking, I'm like, dude, like, all right, let me think about what led me here, where I'm at and where this would go. And then I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. And Tim asked me, but I just he said that there was a test coming up. I'm like, all right, I'll think about it. And then I remember it kind of pissed him off, I think. And he didn't say anything. And then it was just went over. And then there was never a discussion about it ever again. And I know that it probably upset him a bit. But in my head, I'm like, I gotta get out of here. And there was many reasons. I like, even with a good job like that, I was a mess. I was a fucking mess. I never told anybody on how much of a mess I was, but I was fucked up. And so I needed to leave. And that's when I dove into guitar again, and I relearned all the stuff from GIT. I called them myself, and I wanted to go in for their bachelor degree program. So they told me, all right, cool. We'll do the whole testing thing and everything else like that. Actually, what I was thinking about doing too, actually, I was going to do the year program again and then go into the bachelor degree program after that. So they sent me out the test and everything else. I'm like, oh, really? I got to do this again? Yeah. And they're like, yeah. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I just had fun. I just fucking, smoked the whole fucking test. It was funny. And then back then, then they started getting more savvy. So I was able to find out I got accepted a lot faster and everything. But then I was leaving construction and I needed financial aid to go to the school and all that stuff. And that's where there's an Elton John song called Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, but there's a line in it where it's like, what do you think you'll do then? I bet they shoot down your plan. It'll take you a couple of vodka and tonics to get you on your feet again. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, fucking right.
I got out. I found out that I wasn't approved for financial aid on the day that I was going to start school. And I was just like, fuck. I was so mad. I almost lost it in the only reason why, because the guy was kind of smug to me over the phone, and when I went down there, the only reason why, other than I was trying to weigh out, do I want to get arrested? Because I was going to punch him in the face. My whole thing with meeting him was to hurt him. But I went in because I'm like, I got to fucking see this guy because he's not being helpful, and usually they're really helpful. And when I saw him, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna hurt this fucking guy. Yeah. So, and I scared him though. Like when I was in there, and I did voice my complaints. I didn't swear or anything else like that. At least kept myself in line. But I was like, now I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I was I recently took a job at Gold's Gym, and it was minimum wage. I'm like, fuck me. And like there wasn't even a position, so I'm like sweeping the fucking floor. Then I was learning the cash register and shit like that. And I was working a lot of hours. Any hours that can give me like 50, 60 hours a week. And I'm just like, I'm fucked. Like I'm fucked. What am I gonna do? And it was hard. Like I mentally it shot me. It was like, man. And then like again, I'm like, fuck. I'm like, all right, well, trying to. Do you move back home now? I just got settled. Spent the whole summer trying to find a job. Finally fucking found a job. I brought enough money to get me. Honestly, I had like money for like another 2 weeks, and then I got the job at Gold's Gym. Thankfully, my roommate Adam, who I can't thank enough, he's a brother to me too, supported me like when I was having some of the financial issues and stuff like that. And he was like he's a fucking solid ass motherfucker. Really just and he pushed me too. That's when I started we trained hard together. He's strong motherfucker. Mm-hmm. So that he had that helped alleviate a lot of it. But I really got into my head. I got into I went through a period of 4 years of trying to figure out who I was, what I was doing. I was so lost. It sometimes it's hard to think back on. I was so lost.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of the music thing. But yeah, I hated LA. I fucking hated it. I kept looking for shit. And the thing was it wasn't fair. When I look back at it, when I finally understood Los Angeles, I was like, this was my fault. I remember in 2004, I'm like, all right, I'm going to change everything. This is fucked up. I'm like, I just started a new job at Vitaminerals in October of 2003. And the people there were cool. I didn't really get much in the way of breaks, and they seemed to kind of recognize something. Thing was that with all the work that I was doing at that time, as I went there and then went to another place called DNA Sports Nutrition, and I excelled there. And And then I went to Vita Minerals. My friend Mike Crawford got me in there. And I remember I'm like, fuck. I came home in like December. I was, I usually would come home for 2 weeks. And I remember like, I think this is it. Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Like, I'd like the LA won. It fucking won. I'm like, I'm just gonna like go back. I'll talk to Adam, get my shit, figure out something, and come back here. That's gonna be it. And then I came back, and I like when I got back after the holidays, I was like, all right, I was starting to make my. I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's me, like maybe this, like, it's me that's doing this wrong. I'm like, I don't, like, I got to think about things different. I'm looking for a home, Chicago, in Los Angeles. I'm like, maybe I take LA for what it is, and then that's when I'm like, all right, I'm going to go back to Gokor Javician, Gene LaBelle's. I'm going to start training again. I'm going to do that because I hadn't done it in a couple of years. I'm going to go back there, start there. I'm going to stop looking for good pizza out here. Fuck that. Like,
yeah, because that's going to fuck it up too.
Every time that was just fucking with my head worse. And I'm going to I'm going to dive into like the culture out here. And that's what I did. And then in that year too, is when I met my wife, Krista. I mean, we knew each other for a long time. It's when we started dating. We knew each other for years before then. And everything fucking changed. I mean, I was actually surprised on how fast everything changed. It was really, really crazy.
Well, it's when you changed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It took me to do it. Like, I was so encased, like, I was so in my own box, in my own world, and I was so still fucked up and bitter. I got better at, the one thing I did get better at, because I had some anger in the late 90s. I got better at controlling that. I think that being in go-karts and stuff like that really helped with that.
Oh, for sure. Well, martial arts, jiu-jitsu, judo, any combat sport or thing like that, I think does do that.
Oh, yeah. That and lifting, too.
For sure.
Yeah.
A good escape, a good outlet, a good teacher.
Right, yeah.
All those things. That's what that is.
Right.
That's why we preach it so much, and people feel like we're addicted to it, but we know what it does.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I am addicted to it because of the things that it does for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like exactly like you're saying.
Yeah, it opens you up. And that's the thing, is like I was finally able to get out of myself, and you don't realize, and it's sad. And I didn't even understand it, but I've dealt with, I mean, you might find it interesting. I have OCD to a real bad extent. Like, I mean, when I talked, I mean, I've got it better, well managed these days. But when I was really trying to get good at guitar, I mean, I couldn't stop playing the same thing over and over again, and I would sweat, and I would just be like, my eyes would kind of roll back, and I just had to keep going. Okay, did it get good? And I mean, like, I could remember back then. But the thing was, is like, I never thought that there was anything odd or weird about it. Just that's what I did, and but based off of that, then I had that, and then I developed this fucking wicked ass anxiety disorder that fucked me up for quite some time. That never goes away. You just learn how to manage it.
100%.
And then, but then the depression thing, I didn't understand that I was going through that too. And then I started recognizing, I started reading more about mental health and all. I read extensively on it. And then a lot of things made sense about the way that I was feeling and how I, kind of what I was doing to myself, because I was beating the shit out of myself. And I was happy that, like, finally when I was able to step outside of myself and see that, you're just not doing it right, and you're feeding this, like, unfortunately I was like, if you want things to be hard, you'll make them harder. And the like with everything else, with like the mental things that I dealt with, it was like the one that can really get in your own head worse than fucking anybody is you. Like, you can fuck yourself up so bad. I mean, there were days I didn't know that I could get out of bed, and it was like, and I forced myself to do it. And like, okay, now with as much energy, I mean, I fucking felt like I had like all the weight that I could deadlift on top of my back, and I was like almost afraid to get out of bed. Now, it wasn't every day, but there were those days. And then I just get out and like, all right, there's victory one. You're up, you're functioning. Now, get to the fucking gym and, okay, cool, get that, kind of break it down a little bit. Try not to drink, because that's not going to help, and then, set a path, even if it's not like stay up to a certain time, stay out of your room and do these little things. And those little steps, they helped. And then I started like kind of, all right, cool. Then the weight wasn't as heavy. And then you get to recognize the weight. Okay, cool. I'm putting this on me. I can have the, it never goes away, but it walks alongside with you. But you can interact with it at any time. You bring it in for a hug and fucks you all up again.
Yep.
Accepting that, that's always going to be a part. It never truly goes away. And, yeah. And so like, after I was able to, thankfully, I know that a lot of people, I've read a lot of horror stories, of course, and I've had a lot of friends, unfortunately, that had some significant issues. But I'm happy that I was able to actually like separate myself, recognize, okay, cool, I've got this. I'm fucked up. I fucked up. It's cool. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You can be angry. You can be depressed. You can be all this stuff. But like, I can be ultimately in control.
Yep.
And
that's the part people need to hear. Mm-hmm. We all feel a pressure. I think a lot of people might feel that it's just me.
Right.
I feel it the worst.
Yeah.
You don't know what I feel like until someone articulates it like you do. It makes it be like, look, it does suck. But if we can put these controls around it, we can manage it.
Right. Yeah.
Which then we can build off of that.
Yeah.
But that first fucking part seems so almost impossible at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that too. I feel like some high level people, if you can control it, you can really do something with it.
Right.
You can let it be a thing that doesn't tear you down, but maybe for me, the OCD now helps me become really organized in my business. But at first I was like, why do people think I'm fucking crazy?
Yeah.
I just want to fucking like this. Right. And I didn't get it until I became mature. Until time passed and I realized it and found those answers the hard way.
Right.
In managing that. And now with like anxiety too, I get down as fuck like that.
Yeah.
And people don't think that for me because I'm always positive. Right. And I've not heard these stories from you. This is why I fucking love this shit. Getting to hear it because we feel this way. And I often feel like, okay, why am I feeling like this? When I know I'm a motherfucker who can do some shit.
Right.
Oh, it's normal and life is hard. Let me just not make it harder.
Right.
When we do these things to ourselves. And I love hearing it from you and my mind's in 100 directions now listening to you. And I feel like high level people is what I say is high level people use these things. And if it's hard for you, there's an option for it to be okay. You just need to find that and hopefully hearing someone like you say it. And I'm lost for words for me articulating my version of it, but things are going to be hard. Don't make them harder. Get something fucking out of it. Don't let it win.
Right.
Because some people let it win and you touched on it and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. And it's tough. Yeah. I mean, I look back at a lot of what I experienced and all that stuff and the weight that it holds and all that. And I always say, here's the thing that I say is you know what? I remember, man, I remember like being like so angry and like fucked up at I'm like, I can't take this out of me. Can I fucking rip it out and just get out my life, and then when I started being able to manage it better and recognize it and then step away and then like really challenge it, really fucking challenge it. You like in sensing, this is energy. Whether an interesting point is that like when you're in bed and like you can't get up because that like you've got that fucking weight on you, that's energy. You can use that energy in a different direction because that's still a thing, that thing that's making your mind race to make you feel horrible can be reversed to make you do something amazing. Now it takes training. It's not just like that, but that's the thing. It's like that energy. It's energy. It's just trying to like really harness it, like really getting into yourself and understanding that it can be used in an outward motion instead of an inward motion where you're just crushing yourself. And the thing is that when I said that I wanted it out, I mean, I'll fucking go back and I'm happy I went through all that. Now, I never wish it on anybody, but I'm happy I went through it because it fucking like when I was able to like incorporate it and really put it into like, you know, like things that like, you know, that I want to do or whatever, you know, sticking things out, it made me realize like strength, what real fucking strength is, you know. Now, I don't have that all the time, of course, but I can get inward with it. Like I can get into myself. I can find that anger, that burn, all that shit. And I can use that to try to do something. So get through something.
I don't think anybody has it 100% of the time. Even, I mean, people might think I do. And I think it's maybe just because that's how I put my shit out. But sometimes the strongest motherfuckers, like I didn't know this part of you, they're going through it.
Right.
Sometimes we just don't show it.
Yeah.
Because not everything is to be shown. And sometimes at those points, I can't show shit.
Right.
That's why I won't post or say something or at Peppo's have a great idea. I'd be like, fuck, man. All right, it's going to be a couple days.
Right.
And that's okay. But when I come out of it, though, I'm on a fucking tear.
Right.
Because I know the low and I know the fucking high, and I'd rather just keep it here. And that's, you know, the goal, obviously. But so, okay, you also mentioned a point in there about training at Heiston and with GoCore and Gene and whatever. What point did that come in where you took it more serious and then let's try and weave into some of the MMA stuff and getting in, you know, sponsoring people and shit. I'd love to hear about that because my last guest I had is the MMA fighter who's just awesome.
I was watching his videos. He's got a career ahead of him.
Man, and he's like you, humble, hardworking, been through the struggle, and younger than me, has the right path.
Right. Yeah.
Which is fucking cool because if you can catch that early, now you can do something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm really excited for what he's about to do. So I know some of him and his team are probably going to listen to this one for sure. And so I kind of want to hear your story because, you know, it weaves into me young when you gave me the first DVDs of like Pride and early UFC. And I'm just like, this is fucking awesome.
Right.
From me getting my ass kicked in high school wrestling by my friends who were awesome. Just loving the sport of it. How'd that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, so like so Adam was training over there for a while before I came. So like I first started going in back in 2000, shortly after I moved out. But then when I got back in 2004, it's when I just started getting like more regular in there. I got more acquainted with the people and all that. And then I started the thing that I was noticing with the jiu-jitsu and stuff like that was that like there was a real love for judo there. So then I started going into like judo like once a week then as well, and just really took to a lot of that. The thing that was really cool was when we were like going over. So like I guess I have to back up a little bit. Mike Crawford, who one of my very best friends, I worked with him for years and stuff, and I was working with him at Vita Minerals, and he came up with the concept for a product called Cryogel, and making it more mainstream and everything like that, and trying to hit like some commercial attention with it. So he was thinking about it, and I was just like, fuck, man, we'd have our open sparring sessions, so we would just fuck each other up, so it's just like bruising and fucked up and shit everywhere. So anyway, we this one day he's like, I'm trying to think of market to it. And I'm like, I was like all bruised and all that. So I was putting Cryogel like all over and all that. And then he's like, I'm like, oh shit. And then he's like, well, yeah. And then we just kind of, he's like, well, do you think maybe GoCore would be interested? I'm like, fuck, man, I was just thinking that too. I'm like, yeah. So like, let's see if we can incorporate that with, so I went and talked to GoCore and told him about it. He's like, yeah, let's see if we can do something. So, So GoCore came in and he met with the owners of Vita Minerals and all that. And then
if you don't mind, can you tell people who like GoCore or Gene, because they're kind of like, I mean, pioneers-ish or early on.
MMA. GoCore. So if you watch like early UFC and stuff like that, like 1, 2, 3, whatever, you can see GoCore in a lot of people's corners. It was training like Ken Shamrock and those guys. Oleg Tektarov and those guys. He was like a major trainer for that. Fought for ever in early days, like garage fights, all these other things. Comes from back, just a monster, but cool motherfucker, And but He retired. I think he retired relatively young from the fighting game, but he's world champion.
Which
judo.
might be smart.
Right. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, because focusing on your
Yeah.
teaching and all that stuff, and he's a great teacher, and that way But he steps out to compete every once in a while. No, he just I don't know how. I don't know, it was like a couple of years ago. He stepped out and did another judo thing where he fucking won again, of course, because he's a fucking animal. But yeah, he's a early pioneer, world champion sambo judo guy. He's fucking just unbelievable. So that's a bit his story. But he was mentored by Gene LaBelle. Now Gene LaBelle's like he goes back. He like early professional wrestling. He I believe his mom was I can't remember offhand, but I believe she owned some stadium and was like a boxing promoter and things like that. So she had some heavy influence, and Gene was hanging around all these guys while he was growing up and all that. So he got into judo and everything. And I mean, fucking, he passed away this year. It was sad. It was like, and they had a celebration of life for him when I was in Southeast Asia. I unfortunately couldn't make it, but he was just fucking like, I can't say enough about like how, like what the character of this guy was. I mean, he was a stunt man. Like there's so many movies that I've seen him in and all that. Like after I got that, I'm like, fuck, I see him everywhere, you know. Yeah. Big time stunt man, world champion judo. He's like I would go so far as maybe even say like the original founder of MMA, you know, like he was incorporating all that stuff, learned boxing skills and everything else. He was around it, and a fearless person, you know. Met a lot of stunt people that were like still afraid of him when he was like 80. It was like it's really interesting. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's so Gene recognized Gokor at an early age and started helping him out with his career and building up Gokor and became Gokor's sensei, and then they kept a real tight relationship from there on out. And in in the early martial arts MMA days, they were a big influence, and Gokor was a trainer for a lot of these guys. And so that's a bit of their story. And that was funny, too, because, like, after I first met Gokor, then I, like, watched UFC. I'm like, fuck, the same thing what I seen with Gene. I'm, like, seeing him in all the movies, and there's Gokor, like, cornering somebody. So, so that's their story. And then they taught some really great fighters, like Carl Parisian, a few others. Manny was in The Ultimate Fighter. He lost against Nate Diaz, and the title, he blew out his shoulder. It was like a freak accident that happened there. You know, it's too bad. But yeah, really trained a lot of great, met a lot of good friends through Hayastan. I got really lucky with all that. Because after I approached Gokor and we talked to him about that, and we decided to do the sponsorship with him. I started like traveling with him, and then like occasionally with Gene would be with us as well. So I got to travel with him, and then one of his Gokor's students and Ken Hart, who's another like kind of an unassuming monster. He's really thin, but man, fuck you up, you know. So
that's the cool thing about martial arts.
Yeah.
And I said this on the other podcast. You don't know who's who.
Right.
That absolutely. Training will transcend your body type.
Right.
What you look like.
Yeah. Someone
could fuck you up, and that's why I don't fuck with people.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's best to just like be polite. To quote Dalton from Roadhouse. So So anyway, so we started doing some sponsorships with him, and then we did they had a grappling tournament trail and all that. So I met some really cool people, some people that I became real tight with doing that. So I go out to North Carolina quite a bit, and one of my old friends, Paul Bowie, he was a big part of like getting the tournaments and all that stuff together. So it was fun. I had a lot of fun traveling with Gokor and all that. And then that morphed into like doing a sponsorship. Then later with some bigger like some fighters that were in like the UFC or.
You mean some bigger names, like the biggest names, like Quentin Rampage Jackson,
Rampage,
like I don't know, just a couple of the best.
Yeah, so we did with Quentin and everything, and that was a lot of fun. We got to hang out with like the creme de la creme at the time. Yeah,
you called me from Vegas. Mm-hmm. Probably drinking with Rampage on the phone.
I put Rampage on the phone with you.
Yes, you did. Like, just so y'all know, I'm like, he's going to fuck me up over the phone. Like, but that was so cool because I think, I mean, early, mid-20s when he was on his tear, right?
Yeah.
At his
And
heyday.
that's when he was, that's when he was tearing everybody apart.
Yeah. And so like, that's like the Chuck Liddell days. And like, these were the people I was like, that's the rock stars to me.
Right.
You know, that's the movie star to me. I don't give a fuck about most stuff, but in the few things that I care about, this is cool as fuck. Right. So I loved that back then and being a little part of it. Right. Because I actually went to a couple things with you to do some of these things and with the cryo jail stuff. And
we were out in Fort Lauderdale and all that. Yeah.
So it's just cool shit. And I love hearing it. But then also for you, so you were training and then doing the cryo gel and getting that promoted at that time. How serious were you taking it? Like doing the judo and jiu-jitsu? Were you training every day?
No, I was just training like 2 days a week mostly and incorporating it like workouts and stuff like that. And I mean, I wasn't like I was taking a lot of it in, but I wasn't like at one point I started really like working at I think it was, when was it, 2005 to 2006. I got like I started hitting it more like 3 days a week and all that, and I was going out, and I decided I wanted to do some competitions and enter. I was going to enter the Highstein grappling tournament, and then I broke my fucking ankle. It was the second time I broke my right ankle before, but I broke my left ankle, and the timing of this couldn't be worse. It was really, this is what sucked because I hated this, man. So Gokor asked me, he's like, he does this whole tour every year, and he does like, he goes to Germany, he goes to a few other countries, and then he's in Armenia. And he asked me if I would go on tour with him. So I'm like, oh, right on. So like, I'm going to be there, and he's going to be using me for demos and shit like that. So we were we were talking it out, and he's like, well, you don't have to go the entire time. He's like, I was working and everything. And he's like, but I'm like, well, we can bring the cryogel too, so we can try to promote it with there and maybe get some international sales too. So I was trying to figure out a way to incorporate for work. And then I was dropping it a little bit with vitamin minerals, and they were kind of going for it. And I was like, all right, well, it might like, like maybe I can go for like 2 weeks or something like that, which would have been fucking incredible. So this one day, and Gene he would do this to other schools and people that would come in. So he came up to me and he's like, we got some people in and stuff like that. And he's like, I want you to grapple them. Don't hurt them, but like pressure them. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I was just doing that. And it was cool. I was like, that when Gene said that to me, I'm like, he's recognizing some shit now. So I'm obviously getting better. Yeah. That's when I started like, okay, I'm getting good at this. So I was doing all that and stuff like that. So I had the guy's leg wrapped, and I brought him up. Like I came in underneath, and I threw us both up, and we came back down, and I smashed my ankle, just broke it. And the funny thing too was like Dave Grishas just moved out to LA at that time. This was his first week there, and we brought him in there for to train. So it was his first time ever training there. So like and I it snapped, and I got him like, motherfucker. And this is after I was and you feel like a dick. I'm playing with this guy for like 10 fucking minutes. He's not getting anywhere. And then I'm just like kind of showboating. I do this just you just hear that. I'm like, and I knew it was broke, but I was kind of not accepting that it was broke. So I got up. I'm like, it's not broke. I just think I fucked it up, and like walking and all that. So I'm walking away, and then Dave had done some time as an EMT and all that, so he was there and all that. So, and then Gokor was there. And Dave's feeling, he's moving around. He's like, okay, it's probably a sprain and all that. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty fucking painful, but yeah, okay, hopefully it's a sprain. So, Gokor's like, like they're kind of looking at it. He's like, and Gokor's like, no, buddy, that's a sprain. You'll be okay. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like, I'll just ice it up. I'm like, I bet this fucker's broke. I bet it's fucking broke. So anyway, so we leave, and then I get back to Krista's house that night, and so I'm like, I might have broken my ankle. She's like, and she gets really concerned. She's like, well, let's go. I'm like, we got to go to the emergency. I'm like, well, it's night in LA. I don't want to, like there's probably other people that need help worse than I do, whatever. So I'll just wait till tomorrow. Hopefully the swelling will go down. Wishful thinking, elevate my foot. I got it iced up. I'm just trying to do whatever I can. And so I go, and then of course they tell me it's broken and all that. I'm like, fuck, all right, cool. So Gokor calls me up, and I'll never forget. This was the most sincere I've ever heard of. He calls me and says, "Hey, buddy, how's your ankle?" And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it just got confirmed that it's broken. He goes, "Oh, fuck."
Yep.
I'll never forget. That's exactly how he said it. I'm like, yeah. So that unfortunately took me out of going to Armenia or any of that. So which would have been amazing. Yeah. So but yeah, that was and then yeah. So that actually took me out of a lot, because then I wasn't able to do the tournaments and everything else. I was kind of sidelined for a bit. But one of the funny things is that I actually cut my I was going to Boston. I can't remember what the fuck I was going to Boston for. I think Mike and I were going out there for a tournament, and we had to stop. So they had the Freedom Trail out there. So I'm like, fuck, I was like 2 weeks away from getting my cast off, whatever it was. So I cut my cast off myself, and I put I'm wearing a fucking shoe, and my foot is like, it barely fit in my shoe because it's still swollen and stuff. And I'm like, and it's fucking raining out. I'm like, I start walking the trail. I'm like, I'm fucking doing this. And my buddy Mike's like, dude, it's raining out. And he was like really upset. He's like, I'm like, I don't fucking care, man. So I'm like stumbling, I don't know, however many miles doing the fucking Freedom Trail in Boston in the rain. So that was kind of funny.
Fucking cut your own cast off. Well, it ended okay. Yeah. Obviously, you were fine after that. Didn't break it again. Right.
Fuck. Yeah. Other things happened since then, as you know. But
that's the thing too. Like, we didn't even get into the running portion of things. I guess this is fine. What point did that come? Because going through these injuries and then having more and just keeping fucking doing what you've done. When did running become a forefront? Because I don't remember that being a thing.
Yeah.
Until maybe the last 10 years.
Yeah, it kind of popped up. So 2005, I started doing some treadmill running, not very long. Just like I started with a mile, then I started doing like a couple miles here and there. I think I was doing 2 to 3 miles, maybe, like 2 to 3 times a week. And then, so this was interesting. So Krista and I I'm like, I haven't been up to Griffith Park Observatory since 1989, maybe 1990. And this was 2009. And I'm like, I want to check out the observatory and all that. And so we drove up, and then I'm like walking around here, and then I'm looking like back at the mountain. It's Mount Hollywood that it's on, and I'm like kind of looking over to Hollywood. I'm like, man, this is pretty fucking badass, all the trails and shit like that. And that's when it first occurred to me that like it's weird. It might sound stupid, but it opened up my eyes. I'm like, you have this thing where, LA and like the surrounding the San Gabriel Mountains and Santa Monica Mountains and stuff like that are just there for like view. I guess when you're from Chicago or something, different place, it's just, you have this gorgeous, I never thought about being part of it. And that day was when everything changed. It was just an innocent trip up there. And I'm like, well, you could just fucking go up to the top and do these trails. So I'm like, all right, I do some of the treadmill running and all that stuff. And I just did like a 5-mile run on the treadmill. I'm like, I just wonder, see how I can do it 5 miles. I could hold the pace, and it was no problem. So I'm like, all right, like maybe I'm going to try coming out here and running these trails and see how I can do it. So the following weekend I came out, and I just, went for it. I just took me out, man. I was like, fuck. I was like, this is horrible. My calves were killing me. God damn it. But I'd stop, go whenever it burned too much. And then I got to the top and I was really happy about it. So I did that on a Saturday, came back on a Sunday, and I did it again. The following week, I made it from the bottom to the top without stopping. And then I was just doing that for like a few months. And then, going to 2010, I'm like, I started looking at all the other trails and all the stuff surrounding it. And then there wasn't, at that time, like now it's a lot different. There's a lot of people at Griffith Park now, but at that time there was hardly anybody there. So I'm like looking at, I'm like, follow this here and just kind of mapping my way. Now, I didn't have anything to track, but I didn't have any kind of app tracker at that time, at least nothing that I knew of. So I just started going. I'm like, well, let me see. I could find my way back. Even if it's not the same way I came, I'll just fucking figure out. So I just started running and going, and I'd be out there sometimes for 2, sometimes 3 hours, you know, and just that I got to know all the trails real well and all that. And then, so I have, so a long time ago, one of my friends passed away from cancer, my friend Bobby Wall. So he died when he was 19, and it fucked me up. So he died March 16th, 91. And so whenever that time of year came around, it always, because I had a hard time with it when he got really sick. I actually it affected me so much that I couldn't see him. And then I was going to stop by his house on the Saturday morning, and then I just was like, fuck, I'll just go home. So I got home, and he lived pretty close to where my parents lived. So I got home, and my buddy Mike Corpitz called me, and he told me that he passed away, and I was like, wow,
fuck.
you know, it was really crazy. So, so I had a hard time whenever that time of year came along throughout my life. Just like I had this regret,
yep.
you know, just like, and it stayed with, and and it's one of those things that you like. I hope I've captured it enough that I'd never do something like that again. You know, hopefully I think it has. It's taught me a really good lesson.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was December of 2010, and I had never run a 5K. I've never run 10K. I've never run a half marathon or anything. And I was like, man, and I started thinking about next year and shit like that. And then for some reason, I thought about March coming up again. And it was like, man, I don't know why I thought about that. And I was like, I can't fucking do this anymore. I can't do this. Like, I can't get that to be like, you know, another week of where I'm like, you know, just, so I'm like, fuck. I'm like, and then honestly, it was just, I'm like, I wonder when the LA Marathon is. So I fucking look up. It's like right around that same time. I'm like, all right, I'm going to run a marathon. That's how it came up. I'm like, I'm going to run the fucking marathon. So I came home, and I decided when I came home, I actually, I think Dave Grishus might have been, I'm like, dude, I'm going to run the LA Marathon. He's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know. Why not? And he's like, how would that come up? So he went through. He's like, oh, okay. So then I came back to LA, and I think it was like January 2nd or whatever. And I was talking to a few people. I'm like, I talked to Adam and then a few other people. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna run the fucking LA Marathon. So I just went online and I signed up for it. And then I somebody like, well, why would you, like, have you done a 5K or 10? I'm like, no. And they're like, well, why not do like a half marathon maybe at the most, or do a 10K and see how you do. I'm like, well, I'm fucking in the mountains for hours. Yeah. So I don't know how far I'm going, but I know it's further than 6.2 miles. Yeah. So, I'm like, I think I'm probably doing a half marathon up there. I got to be doing some major miles here. So, everyone thought I was out of my fucking mind. And, but I'm like, I didn't know what to do, how to train. I had no one to teach me. The thing that was, that did kind of come along is like when I posted on Facebook. Now I had 2 months to train for this. And, I posted on Facebook that I was going to sign up. And then, one of my good friends, Jen Goodman, it turns out her dad was a marathon runner. So he got in touch with me and gave me some advice and stuff like that. I wasn't in touch with him constantly, but I talked to him a couple times and emailed with him.
Anything at that first one is probably helpful.
Right.
Because you know nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the thing was, too, is that what I didn't know was when I got to the street running. So this is when I hear some fucked up, some funny shit, the worst course ever. So I'm like, in Silver Lake, that's where Krista was living at the time. I mean, I might as well have been living there, too, because I was over there so much. They have a reservoir. So I'm like, I drove around the reservoir. I'm like, okay, it's 2.2 miles around. So I'll just fucking run around the reservoir because it's cool because, like, there's a view and shit like that. Fuck, man. By the time I got to like 19 miles, I'm like, I hate this fucking run. I can't spinning around this motherfucker. Yep. I'm like, this is the worst fucking thing ever. But it was interesting because like I remember I'm like, all right, I'm going to do, like, I didn't know how to do it. So I'm like, okay, I think I'll run around this thing like 5 times for my first like long run. I think it put me like at 11 miles. So I did it. I'm like, oh, cool. That was, no problem. Fucking, I'll do like a couple more laps. So I added on to it the following week. And so I think, what was I up at? Like right around like 15. So I got to, I'm like, okay, I'm like, this is easy. And then I remember, I think I was even talking to Adam, like, the transformation of the hill running to flat. I'm like, there's like it's interesting because like I'm not having a problem with this. It's just that the fucking circling the reservoir is really getting at me. Yeah. Though the thing that did fuck me up was I got like shin splints really bad because I like not having that cushion that you're running on dirt trail as opposed to the street. It was a different thing. So I thought that was going to be the thing that stopped me, and then I started reading it on how it stopped other people, and I'm like, all right, well, hang on a minute. I'm like, maybe this is just like if you don't work out, like you never worked out your biceps in your life, and you work on so much fucking pain, and you can't bring your arms down. It's all this, and then you have the first few times that are going to be like that, and you slowly start putting. I'm like, maybe it's like that, but I need to like do some like follow up. So I'll elevate, I'll ice my knees and my shins and everything else like that, and then I'll see how that. And sure as shit, like and I'll take some Advil and stuff. Whenever I at that time, sometimes I overdo it on Advil, but but then after a few weeks, that went away. I was like, fuck. I was actually blown away that it stopped, and I never had it again. And I mean, it was severe. Like I was in some fucking major pain that I really did genuinely think it was going to stop me. But even going forward, I remember the first run that let me know that I might not be ready for this, or as cocky as I thought, was when I did my first 17-mile run. And I got done. I'm like, whoa, my body's reacting in a different way now. And I'm like, am I going to throw up? That's going to happen.
There's levels to this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When you reach that next thing.
Yeah.
And you've never felt it.
Yeah. It was
thanks to you, I've been there.
Yeah. It was a cold, hard slap in the face. It was like, okay, take that. And I was like, damn. And I needed like a few hours of recovery. And I was like trying to figure out. And I was reading some things online to try to figure out like how to get by it. And I think I did the following week. I did 15 without a problem, and then I hit the 17 again. Had not as much of a problem, but still a problem. Then I bounced up to 19. I think I only trained for 19 before the marathon, and then and then I was ready to go. And then the first LA marathon was interesting. So it was good. It helped me take my mind off of being sad. It gave me a drive, and I thought in my head, I'm doing this for my old friend. And all that. And it like, so I changed that energy, changed the whole fucking dynamic. But the fucking funniest shit, it was like I was going to have to pay for that. So LA that year in 2011, it starts raining at mile 6. And it's been windy when we got out there on the course. And it's like kind of a drizzle. By the fucking time, because at that time they changed it now, but it was like, it was stadium to C. So it was it started at Dodger Stadium and it end in Santa Monica, somewhat close to the Santa Monica Pier, but not there. And by the time we were in Santa Monica, it was like, I want to say it was like 42 degrees, maybe 43 degrees, 30-mile-an-hour winds, fucking pouring rain.
For your first one too.
I'm like, motherfucker. And I remember getting done and I was fucking like, I was like, I remember for one, I almost like started crying at the finish line. There was a few things that were going on that year that were difficult, but I like got across the finish line and all that, and then we got the little thing, and so I got that fucking the foil wrap.
Yeah,
and I got it like around me, and then
the warming blanket.
Then finally it's like everything is starting to cool down, and since I signed up late for the LA Marathon. I didn't know but my parking was like 2.5 miles away, and I didn't realize it was that far away from the finish line. It might have even been close to 3. So I'm walking back, and so I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna fucking freeze to death. Like it was unbelievable. So
when your body's that depleted, you quite literally
Yeah. I was like, this is worse than the fucking marathon.
Yeah.
So I get to where I'm like, I could see the like, I'm at the, because we had the last furthest away parking places. I signed up late for the LA Marathon, the last fucking available lot. So like, I'm going over there, and like the sidewalk is like covered with water. Like it's deep. So, I'm like, fuck, and I'm looking, it's like this pool, and it's just all the way out everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta fucking walk through this. So I start walking through it, and it's like, it's up here, and it's so fucking cold. And I'm honestly, I'm shaking.
And you're by yourself.
Yeah, by myself. I'm like, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking fall down, and I'm gonna drown.
This might be it.
In 6 inches of water. This is gonna be how it ends.
I wish people knew, because I know how you feel from doing that, especially the first one,
right,
when you don't know what to feel. I've never walked that far and then felt that alone.
Right.
But I wish people, when you feel like that, like you quite literally like, I'm fucked.
I'm dead.
This might be it.
Yeah. And I'm like, if I fucking die like this, man, oh, Jesus Christ. So, yeah. So anyway, so I finally get through this fucking thing, and it was so funny. At least I remember I brought a change of clothes, and I didn't think that I would need them. That was the funny thing. I reluctantly put it in my trunk. So I'm like, fuck, I threw it in the back seat of my car, and I got in the back seat of my car. I started it from the back seat, and I had a seriously thought. I was like naked in the back seat of my car for like 10 minutes, and like everything fought because I couldn't move. And I had like some towels, on top of me and shit, and then finally changed. And it took me about a half an hour, maybe longer, to get out of the parking lot. It was really fucking funny. But the thing that I did then, the following years, I contacted Tracy, your sister, and she's working for the American Cancer Society. So I told her, I'm like, look, I want to do this all right. I want to really like make a dedication to Bobby Wall. So she helped me, and I formed a Mosaic page on the American Cancer Society thing, and I've been raising money for American Cancer Society for cancer research since the LA Marathon in 2012. And and so like I don't know where I'm at now, like over 17 grand or something like that.
Awesome.
So, so that's been a real good thing. So my whole life, my whole thought around that time completely changed. And, Bobby's family got in touch with me and all that stuff. I got to talk to them at some depth and everything, and it was cool. Yeah. And they were really happy, that like his memory's been thought of and all that. So I was happy about that. It was
That's
nice.
fucking great.
Yeah. So it's been something. I love it.
Damn.
So.
And I think you've done the marathon every year since.
Yeah.
That first one, right?
Yeah. I've done 12 straight LA marathons. Next one will be my 13th.
Fuck.
I'll be a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's impressive. Altogether, how many marathons do you think you've done? I gotta think it's like 50.
36.
36?
Mm-hmm.
Not half marathons probably the same.
Like 50 or more.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And that's, you started me in the running because I've almost followed your progression, almost the same kind of things you've done. I'm like, cool, I'm gonna do that too then. Yeah. And some of mine was from the Army, but that was the right time for me to see you doing that. Making a transition into getting back, because I was fast as fuck athlete, but just powerlifting and weightlifting, I didn't run for shit afterwards. And it took me quite a while to see you do that, and then to test myself in that. And luckily you went through that hard shit, so then you can give me some knowledge when I started that journey.
Right. Yeah.
And I haven't caught up to you yet, and I probably won't, because the marathons for me, I'll do it because I want to test myself.
Well, right. Yeah.
And Chicago, of course, is the lottery, but I've considered doing something like you've done with a veteran organization or something like that now that I'm out, because I don't want to just wait for the lottery anymore.
Right.
And I want to make reasons for why I'm doing things, and not just do it for me anymore. Give myself a reason to fucking go hard again.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, but just to see you do that in the amount that you've done it with injury is fucking impressive.
Yeah, but even like I think one of the coolest things, and I hate to say that I've done because I don't want to sound like I'm a fucking egomaniac or anything, but was like when LA got postponed in 2021, they didn't know, they ended up having it in November, but it wasn't in March. They barely made the cutoff of COVID in 2020. Right after I ran the LA Marathon in 2020, it's like the next day everything's shut down. So they barely got it out. But the following year, they signed up for it, and they announced that it was going to be postponed. They weren't sure about a date yet. And that was like, motherfucker. I was fucking mad. So I was running all these virtual. I think I ran 15 virtual halves, maybe more during that time. I was doing.
Yeah, I did
like
a couple of those too.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And so it was funny as shit. So this is funny. So my wife Krista, she gets concerned about like some of the shit that I do, and I appreciate that.
Wow.
Yeah. So
sounds familiar.
But we're talking. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Talking to you about that. So we were talking, and she's like, well, what if you did, like, because it was 30 years that Bobby had passed away. So she's like, what if you did like a 30-mile run and you dedicate it to him? And I'm like, wow, I can't believe you're saying this, but yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I made up my own route, and I put it together. I put out the American Cancer Society thing again. I had my own start time. I started it at 4 a.m. at Griffith Park, and I did a 30.1-mile run, and it was cool. I had one of my friends, Victor Lazon, he's a monster runner. He's just getting better and better. He came out and met me 20 miles in and paced me for the last 10. And then the CEO of our company, Adele, he came out and ran the last 2 miles with me. So that was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, but yeah, that was like that. I felt like was like because I love that, because I'm like, you know, when Krista said it, I'm like, you know what, then this is on me. Like when I announced it, like like this is all up to me. Like I was planning out my times. And then when I talked to Vic on where to meet me and shit like that, at what time, so it had to be at this regimented time. And I remember like getting to Griffith Park at 4 a.m. It's a weird place. Like, I don't know what fucking people are doing over there, but man, it was like, I was like, a car drove up by me when I'm in the park. Now I'm by myself and it's fucking dark. So I'm stepping off. I'm like, oh, somebody, like, what do they got in mind here and shit? And so, and then part of my run was around the LA River. And I probably got to the LA River at about, I want to say about 4:15, 4:20 a.m. And there's a lot of characters hanging around the LA River, and you have this fucking maniac go running by him with no shirt on. And I'm like, all right, you know, might have to throw down. I don't know. I don't know what anybody's going to do. And all this shit, I had to run between all these people. I'm like, fuck are they doing? But I'm like, I'm going to not change my route. I got my route mapped out. You know, my part of my training run was a 25-mile run, you know, so I knew exactly where I was going and all that stuff. So, but that's why that one I loved more than anything, like, cause that was me. I created that. I stuck by that. I created a training regimen for it. And, I mean, even the funny thing too, is like my short run before that run was 17 miles. So that was like not comparison to what I did for like a regular marathon. So it was really like, you know, taking everything and really being strict to it and saying, you know, well, fuck this. I'm, you know, going to do this and make it happen. And that was cool. I love that. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, man. Fuck. All right. So from that brings us pretty current, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How long ago was that 30 miler?
2021.
Okay. So yeah, recently. Now, do you plan to continue doing the marathons and everything like you've been doing? Like obviously doing LA. Mm-hmm. I think you'll probably do that until your legs fucking fall off, or if you have a fucking cast on, or shit.
That's the thing is like I mean, and like, you know, backing up a bit because of the injuries and stuff like that. I mean, like in 2019 when I've blown out both of my knees. I need a knee replacement on my right knee, and then I have to have eventually have some major surgery on my left knee. So the way I think you know this, the way I blew up my left knee was at the Christmas party at Leaf.
Can you please tell that story if you want to? Because from all the things you've done, for this to be the way.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. So I was doing that, like everyone's dancing and stuff like that, and you know, it was getting crazy. It's at our Christmas party. So I'm like, I could do the splits and all that stuff. So I went down to the splits and everything like that. And it's like, everyone's like freaking out. So they're busting out their cameras. Oh, do it again. So I did it again. Do it again. I'm like, do it again. And then they're like, do it again. So the last time I jumped up in the air, you know, touched my toes in the air, came down and did the splits. I blew my fucking left knee out. Just blew it out. And I felt it like kind of go. And I'm like, like when it slipped, I'm like, oh, motherfucker, this isn't good. And like, you know, it's like kind of that, it was like a numb the warm rush, and then I could feel it swelling. I'm like, all right, cool. I got all of that, motherfucker. So I hung out, tried to do my best. As I'm walking, my knees slipping out. I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, all right, cool. So hung out, had a few more drinks, trying to act like it didn't happen. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, oh man, this is gonna fuck up next year running. And I came home, and I think it was about 11:30 or something. I came home and I woke up Krista. I'm like, hey, yeah, we're in the morning. We're gonna have to go to the emergency room. She's like, what happened? I'm like blew my knee out dancing. But I remember that night I was scared. I was scared. It wasn't what this was about. I was like, having this happen in December, and I've got like I'm signed up for 3 runs, through March. I'm like, can I do any of these? I'm like, fuck. So I was really upset. Anyway, I elevated my knee the next morning. We go to the emergency, which was really funny. I mean, they were blown away at the story, and it turned into like, they were like, tell them how you did this. And one was like, are you a gymnast? And I didn't know, but anyway, so, I left on crutches and all that shit. And then they gave me something, and I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm not going to walk on the crutches or anything. And, I was trying to weigh things out. I'm like, okay, well, I definitely can't run right now. I'm going to see how it is. I didn't want to stop working out either, but I was doing like little pressure tests and stuff like that. And they did like kind of an assessment on it. They were remarking, Krista's told me this before, and like I guess I don't give myself enough credit for it. And it's not, and this is not something that I recommend. It's only because I'm able to go through it. She's like, your pain threshold is not like anything I've ever seen. And they were when they were doing the test on my knee and they were moving it around and everything else like that, they were surprised that it wasn't hurting me or anything. And I'm like, well, there's pinches and it's uncomfortable, but it doesn't hurt. And they're like, oh, okay. So they weren't really too sure. They said, well, they kind of thought it might be an ACL tear. And I'm like, all right. So what ended up happening, though, the work set me up really good with the SoCal Orthopedic Institute. So I went there and I met with the doctor and all that stuff, and then they gave me an MRI, and then I had to wait for the follow-up meeting and everything. So, but what ended up happening when I did that was in December. I came home for the holidays and back to Chicago, and there was a few nice days out. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna fucking try to run. So I did, and it was like a little uncomfortable, but I only ran like 2 miles. So then I went to the gym, to LA Fitness. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do it on the street. So I went to LA Fitness and I ran like a 5K, and it was like, okay. I kept my time kind of low. I'm like, it hurts a little bit, but it's all right. I'm like, I think I can still do, maybe I can do the half marathon in Pasadena, and it was like, whatever, it's like mid-January. So I did some training and stuff like that, and my knee was swelling up and going down, and I was just elevating and all that shit. So I ran the half marathon. And then I had the Surf City Marathon in Huntington Beach coming up 2 weeks after that. So I'm just like, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to see if I can do this. So I ran it. And my time sucked. It was like 4:50 or whatever it was. I'm like, but I got through it. I'm like, all right, I can do LA. I know I can do LA. So I had my follow-up doctor's appointment like a week after that. So I met with the doctor. And they went over the MRI. So he was a real cool guy, like really. And they have a good understanding of like, because they work with a lot of people that like work out in sports and all this shit. So they went. He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. So and he was funny and all this and really charismatic. I liked him immediately. I was like, all right, this is a really cool guy. He's like, okay, so you have a full ACL tear, a partial MCL tear, and a torn meniscus on your knee. And he's like, I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, all right. So he's like, well, I'm going to recommend surgery and all that. And he's like, there's some things that you could do with some of these shots and all that stuff. So there's options. And he's going over everything. I'm like, God damn it. I'm like, I got a lot of plans for this year. He's like, well, yeah, no, they did put down that you're a runner and all that. He's like, but I don't see running in your immediate future. I'm like, well, I just ran a marathon like a week ago. And he's like, what? And he's like, And he goes, where? What? And I'm like, in Huntington Beach. And he was really confused. And he's like, okay, well, if you can do it, I guess. I'm like, then I'm confused. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, all right. I'm like, should I keep doing these? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, well, I got the LA Marathon coming up in like a month. I'm like, I'm just wondering if it's going to cause any long-term damage or anything else like that. And he was like, it could. I don't know what to say. This is going to be based on anything that you choose to do, and like what the pain is going to be and all that. So I'm like, all right, well, we did a couple follow-ups and stuff like that. I never did get the surgery. I ran LA Marathon. I think I ran 6 marathons that year, and a bunch of halves and everything.
I don't know if people can conceptualize how fucking crazy it is.
Right.
It seems made up.
Yeah.
If you didn't know it's fucking true. It seems like, no, you didn't. That's what the fuck, right?
The worst part about it, though, so my thing, so I had to go through some shit. And, I mean, I'm doing, like, because there's no textbook on this at all. So you really have to fucking figure out you have to figure this out on your own. If you're going to do this, you have to figure it out on your own. So, now remember, my bad knee is the right knee, right? That's the fucked up one. The left one, I never saw that coming.
Yeah.
So now, because this one's so jacked, I'm relying on my right one. So now the right knee gets fucked. They're both so swollen. It was like a joke. I was actually laughing on how much they fucking hurt. And then we have all these stairs at work, and I'm like an old man, like fucking going and all this shit. And it's funny because and this is going on while I'm still actively running. And I think it was Nate. It was our chief business officer. And he's competitive as a motherfucker. Really, really driven fucking kid, man. I love that guy. And he's like, dude, how you're walking like that. How are you able to do it? I'm like, I don't know. I can just make it happen. I'm like, when it comes time to it, I can make it happen. But yeah, in the interim, this is what you have to deal with. Yeah. And
it's the behind the scenes people don't see.
Right.
The price we pay for some of the things that we do.
Oh, absolutely.
That we fucking have to do.
Right. And that was all that was, and I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that it's right. I don't know that anybody should follow that. But I didn't want to get sidelined because I had everything planned out for the year. So I'm not gonna. I'll do what I can to rehab myself and everything. And I had to put up with a fucking shit ton of pain because there wasn't a pleasant step. There was no pleasant steps. I got some knee wraps for my knees and all that for both of them, and just did that. And those help a little bit. They did take some of the pain away. And then it sounds funny. But after 5-6 miles, you just don't feel it anymore. It's like, you just got, and then, it comes back after the runs are over an hour later, and then you're like fucking elevating and everything else. But yeah, that was difficult to go through. Now they kind of come and go, the pain and all that. I mean, I did put myself through a lot. I was able to start training differently with legs and everything. I have to figure out different workout regimens, getting some of the flexibility. I lost a lot of flexibility, but not a ton. So, and believe it or not, it's like, it seems to still be getting better. So there could be a point, and I don't even know how this is possible because I haven't even read about this shit. But it makes me question things a lot, honestly, of maybe we just look to, to do the surgeries, to take the medications, to do all this other stuff instead of figuring these things out on our own. Because anything I've read, there's nothing that says that I should be doing any of this at all. It says pretty much that you'd be stopped and people would have an acceptance. So I can't do it anymore because and that's perfectly acceptable. I wouldn't tell anybody different. But if you can apply yourself, if you can get yourself into a mental state, I think you can test those boundaries. I mean, I sure should have. I have, and I still am.
You can.
Yeah.
You can.
And that's the thing. It's so that's what I really think is you don't necessarily, and I'm not saying it's all right in every circumstances, but I'm thinking in things like this. And then we also, as people, will generate an excuse of why we can't, and it's not to say that it is necessarily an excuse, because believe me, you fucking blew your knee out.
Yeah.
You blew that fucker out. It's it's fucked. So you by any extent of the imagination, you shouldn't be able to do this shit. And who would be like for me to ever fucking say that you would? I thought I was done. I mean, I on my own when the night before I went to the emergency room, I was just, how am I going to get through this? And like I said, I was genuinely scared. I'm like, I can't have this stop. I can't have this stop me, man. I'm like, I can't fucking have it. And then getting the assessment and shit like that, and then coming back and leaving on crutches, but not walking in the house with on crutches. And fuck, man, I broke my foot last year.
Keep going. The list doesn't end. Okay.
I mean, that was just it, and then because so the foot thing is funny. I mean, not funny, but it was kind of funny. So that was on my dip bar. So I do these exercises on my dip bars where I kind of swing up and hold, and then swing back and hold in a push-up position. And but when you're coming through fast. And like I don't train with any shoes on. I do 2 a day, so it's my morning workout. And so while I'm swinging through, I fucking blast I just fucking, like I was trying to break my foot, like my toe at least. I smashed it so hard into the base of this thing 4 days before the LA Marathon. I fucking, boom, I'm like, oh. It was like, it would hurt in your stomach. I'm like, whoa, motherfucker. It's like, Jesus Christ, I got all of it. So I'm like, fuck, all right, give myself a second. Like, okay. And I'm laughing. I'm like, God damn it, motherfucker. And I'm like, I don't even want to take my sock off right now. I don't want to fucking see it. So eventually, like, I wait a few minutes. I take my sock off, and my foot, my second toe is just swollen as fuck. So I'm like, God damn it. So come out, and I'm like limping out. And then Krista's in the other room, and I'm like, I know I broke my toe. I'm like, I know I broke it. And she's like, she looks like, oh my God. And it started getting like a little bit of the purple coming in there. Yeah, pretty quick. And she's like, well, you're not running the marathon. I'm like, I'm running the marathon. And she's like, she was trying to talk me out of it. I'm like, I'm not going to not run the marathon. So I had to do at least one more training run before. I'm like, okay, it didn't really hurt that much, so I'm like, all right, cool. I just did like a 2-mile run. I'm like, I'll save it for the course. So, and that was in November of 2021. That's when they postponed the LA Marathon too. And I fucking, I ran my fastest LA Marathon.
There's no playbook to this shit. There's no fucking thing that's going to describe what is going to fucking happen, and how things work.
No, yeah, that was fucking crazy. So, but I mean, I did pay a price for it. I did run, I didn't hold back on any of my running regimens. So, going forward into 2022 in May, I was at Yosemite. I ran there's vacation races. They have a run outside of Yosemite Park, and I ran that. And it was my fastest half marathon. But when I was running it at the end, I'm like, I fucked myself up. Like there's something gonna be wrong here. And I think I was telling you. I mean, luckily we were gonna do this major hike Upper Yosemite Falls. I've done it before, and it's intimidating. It's a tough one. And one of the guys I was with, Abe, and he's pretty hardcore fucking guy himself, and he was blown away. He's like, because my toe, it got worse. Like it was black. It was how fucked up, and then went up my foot. But he was blown away. He's like, how did you run that stuff? I'm like, I don't know, just fucking felt it, man. I'm like, I was, and I ran that course before 2 other times, and it is a pretty friendly course. There's like parts of it that are up and down and trails. It's a little challenging at first, but then you go through a nice decline, so you can get some speed. And I was just fucking feeling the speed. But then at the last 2 miles, you're like up and down, and I wasn't slowing down. I was like, man, I am fucking burning this course. And I had people that were really fast that went by me, and I was tearing by them at the end. But it was seriously the last quarter mile of the run where I felt that I hurt myself. But anyway, so he was like really blown away that I had done it. So we went. So I knew I was in a lot of pain. I mean, I was in a lot of pain. I knew I did something wrong. I'm like, my knees actually hurt too, and I'm like, fuck, because I'm probably running all fucked up because my foot's not exactly
Compensating.
healed.
Yeah.
So we got to the hike late and we couldn't find any parking. So we're like, okay, didn't do it. So I'm like, fuck, man, I would have done that. I probably would have like thrashed myself. Anyway, pain's not going away. I'm like, this is bad. And so I go see a doctor finally. and I'm like, this feels like a break now. Like this feels like a break. And he's like kind of feeling it around and stuff like that. He's moving around. He's doing all this shit and everything else. Like, he's like, well, I think it's probably a stress fracture. And he's like, so, but we got to do an MRI to be able to tell. So I'm like, all right, great. So I'll do an MRI. So we do the MRI, comes back, toes smashed, and the top of my foot is broke. So yeah, that's when I broke that. So, but then I'm like, motherfucker. So I had to cancel I had a marathon to do. It would have been 2 weeks later that I just wasn't going to do because I had like the San Francisco coming up in July. And I'm like, fuck, all right, cool. All right, so I can't train the rest of this month. I got to get like this to heal. Like I'll take 3 weeks off from running, but I'll work out. I'll do my all that other shit because like my personal training is so intense. It's high intensity training, so It's just fucking like brutal. So that'll keep my cardio up and all that shit. So that's what I did. And then after the come June, I was like, all right, I have like, what was it? I think I had 5 weeks to train. So I trained and it was painful. It wasn't bad. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, all right, the pain kind of went away. I think my opening run was like a 13 miler. And the pain kind of went away in there, but then it was like kind of coming back and shit like that. So I'm doing the same thing, elevate, nice. And then, I had your shoes, the ones those Nikes that you recommended.
Fuck yeah.
And that really, honestly, I think if without those, I don't know that, like, because in the ASICs, they were just killing me. And I love
and those are excellent.
Oh, yeah. No, the Nimbus are amazing. But those fucking Nikes, man, they're
some next level shit.
Yeah. So, and they help my knees a lot. My knees hardly hurt anymore and all that shit, too. So, anyways, so I'm like, you have the pain and all that stuff. And I'm like, fuck, this thing is definitely still broken. Then they want me to cast, fuck you, whatever. They want me to cast up and this other shit. And I'm like, anyway. Do
the right thing, but. The perceived right thing.
Exactly. But, stay off it. They gave me a boot. I never wore it. Krista was really mad at me. And rightfully so. And,
they're usually accurate.
She was getting so pissed at me. And so the San Francisco comes up, and I was concerned because I always do a really long walk the day before. It's just something I've run San Francisco many times too, and I don't want to miss that marathon. I don't want to fucking miss it. I love it. It's one of my favorites. It might be my favorite. And I like LA because of what I do for it specifically, but the route, I love the fucking route, running across the Golden Gate Bridge and all that shit. It's awesome. Just badass. So so I do a long walk. I'm like, fuck it, whatever. I could kind of feel some pain as I'm doing it. Like, I think my buddy Vic ran that one out there too. So he was out there. It was cool having somebody to hang with. I usually am by myself. So I told him about this. He's like, why the fuck would you do a long? I'm like, dude, it's just my fucking thing. Yep. I'm like, you'll love it. Trust me. And he's kind of introverted and stuff like that. And then he was like, we went to some place. I'm like, it got some challenging, like it was pretty funny. Like, we did a route that I wasn't expecting. It was just like, okay, well, here we are. And it was about 11 miles. So my foot was kind of hurting that night. And I'm like, so I'm like, we had dinner and all this shit, got back to the room, and I'm just kind of doing my thing that I like, kind of like just stretches and shit like that. Just kind of that little bit of concern about the next morning and all that. And then got up and I ran my fastest San Francisco marathon. There was no, like, I remember, I'm like, we'll see how it goes. I'm like, just going to take, and then as it's gone, I'm like, fuck, man. I'm like, this is feeling really good, And then I'm like, okay, don't get over, because you can, you have those times.
Sure. Yep.
Keep yourself back, even though, because you're 8 miles in, you remember 20. You got to get up to that point when you really start to wear. But the thing that was really interesting was 14 miles in, my pace started increasing naturally. It was weird. I wasn't putting any more energy into it. It was just going faster. I'm like, all right, I'll go with this, but like I'm gonna monitor this, and it just never stopped. And then it was all the way to the end. I got done. I was almost laughing. What the fuck was that? I'm like, well, I don't know how that happened, but here it is. So I was like, oh, fucking A, right on. So I was happy about that.
That's fucking crazy. So there's no rhyme or reason for these things, and that's why we shouldn't accept things at face value. Like you said, you were evaluated. Should this surgery be it? Why is this the first option? Is there something else? Can my body do something else? Can I figure this out? Because as you go through these injuries, as we age, and you getting better, or at least can continue, you're breaking what might. I mean, most people probably would get a surgery at that point. But is there something else? What more do we have in us? And it's a lot.
Right.
I think there's a thing the Navy SEALs say when you get to what you think is your threshold, you're actually at about 30%, or it's like 33%. But that's because that's where most people will end and feel like uncomfortable. But then once you pass that, there's this whole other fucking world that goes on. And that's not just in running or Navy SEAL training. It's in mindset. It's in your ability to recover if you do these things right.
Right.
It doesn't just happen. And it definitely doesn't happen just the first time you try it.
Yeah.
But after 37 marathons or whatever, and after so much time in fitness, in the nutrition industry, and learning, you realize there's some more things that people are just people, for one. They haven't figured everything out.
Right.
Doctors don't know everything. Some know more than others, all this. But it's incredible to hear that. And I wish people experienced a taste of what you're talking about or what we've done to go past that point. Because there's a whole, I mean, that translates into everything.
Yeah.
Then most hard shit doesn't feel that hard.
Right. Yeah, no, because that mental thing can just be used in any direction. And there's really nothing that you can't do. There's nothing.
Because when you go through that, the fuck? What's hard then?
Right.
Hard.
Right.
What hard is gets redefined.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. It does put a different, but you don't see as many, like, again, I'm not going to say that that's the right thing to do. I'm not going to say, okay, no, just don't take the doctor's advice. Because honestly, I dealt with, like, I've trained people. I've helped people with regimens. And if they have something, take the fucking doctors. Don't do as I do. I'll say it's like, if anybody does that, it's like, you test yourself and stuff like that. But understand that you really could fuck yourself up worse. Yeah. But there are those points that you can just test it. So test it. Like, don't be afraid to test it. And then if, say that you do need a surgeon, this is something I have to program myself for, because eventually it will need to happen, is I have to factor it into the course of the year. When could it take place and what I'm going to need, like, for recovery time and, like, when I can get started again. So there's those things. It's like I don't want to say, but I do I'll digress a little bit, because I do say that you can see, like, maybe you don't necessarily need things, because, like, with everything that I fucking read, it's like they're not giving you the wrong advice, but I shouldn't be able to do any of this. Yeah. And that's the thing. And so, like, that does bring up some questions and things like that of, like, and it's easy to stop somebody if somebody who's actually had a goal or something like that, and something like that happened to them, and it's a huge, mental roadblock. And
but don't stop so quickly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just, start off by walking with it and all this, and seeing if you can get away with it. Of course, wrap your knees, wrap whatever. See if you can, like, test the boundaries a bit, and then not necessarily push it, not necessarily stop it. But then, even if you do, don't use that as a reason why you can't ever do it again. Because here's what I'm fucking telling you, is that if I get the surgery, I'm expecting to come back 110%. Like,
right, because you're fixed.
Right. Exactly.
I'm good now.
So that's the thing. It's like, this isn't just, okay, now just be careful the rest. No fucking way. It's like, now I'm where I should be, and I'm ready to tear shit up. Yeah. Now, I'll be smart, as I can be, but, like, that's the thing. It's like, so think about that. It's like, if you have to go into that, you're actually bettering, you're making yourself better based on that decision.
Fuck yeah, that's the right way to look at any of that kind of thing that we have to do. And I'm with you. And that mindset is why I fucking connect with you and people like you. Yeah, because I'm going to be better then.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
But, all right. So we did not get to hit like fucking 10 very important things. So I think we're going to make a part 2 to this because I glanced at my thing and we're 2 hours and 10 minutes in.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah.
And I want people to, the rest of what I want to talk about will be another hour and a half or 2 hours.
Okay.
And I don't want to go down that path right now.
Okay.
I want to make this 2 parts and we can do it over Zoom because I'm sure you're fucking well equipped at your house. And I just got Zoom and just figured out how to do that remotely. And now that I know how, we're going to have to make this a part 2.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Because we did not hit some incredibly important things. So yeah, y'all heard a fucking shit ton today. Okay. And it's actually just like a small part, right? So the fitness, the MMA, and music is a part of it. There's a whole nother part, to the things that we've done together and the things that I've seen him do that I really want my fucking crew to fucking hear and experience on some next level shit. Some of that was some next level shit that most people don't ever do or don't ever hear. Okay. And then there's a whole nother fucking thing that we'll talk about next time. Okay. A few I alluded to in the intro, and a few that will come out naturally through these talks, because talking today reminded me of several things that I'm going to go home, re-listen to, and then put in my notes for the next one. Okay. So Charles, thank you. I'm glad this is just a part 1.
Yeah, it's fun.
Because I fucking love hearing it, because it keeps adding to my fucking, mental fucking game. And so, I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you listen to this whole fucking thing. I'm going to, clip some up and put some dope shit out there and find the best parts, but I appreciate you guys. Charles, thank you so much. Until next time, this was number 39. Out.
Later.
Sweet. Man, they're really though, they're